Foley.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to spend a few minutes going through some of the terms associated with flood insurance, as well as some of the coverages, what it covers, what it doesn't cover. I've seen some of the questions coming through on the chat. I think we'll probably address a lot of those in the course of this. I want to start with what is an actual flood? How is it defined for insurance purposes? A flood is defined as an excess of water on land that is normally dry that affects 2 or more acres of land or 2 or more properties. So it's an actual, most people feel like they know a flood when they see it, but there actually is a definition, and this is it. Now, floods are caused by thunderstorms, hurricanes, snow melting, and water backup from drainage systems such as dams and levees. What isn't considered a flood is an internal pipe break or a hole in the roof because of maybe a tree fell on it because of the wind, broken windows because of wind and water gets in. Those are not considered flood. That's not considered flood damage, but that is probably covered by your homeowner's insurance policy. Flood insurance is a separate policy from homeowner's insurance. So kind of piggybacking off of that last slide, you have to, in order to be covered for flood, you have to buy a separate policy. It's not included in your homeowner's insurance. It's an important distinction that a lot of people miss. Flood zones, you hear about that a lot, how whether something's in a flood zone or not in a flood zone. Actually, every property is in a flood zone. It's a matter of how high the risk exists, how high the risk is of a flood occurring in that zone. Flood zones are determined by the NFIP, the National Flood Insurance Program, that is managed by FEMA. Okay, so here are some of the zones. Flood zone risks in, for example, an X zone. X zone is considered a fairly low risk, moderate to low risk of flood. That's where a lot of people will assume if it's in an X zone, they'll say, well, it's not in a flood zone. And that's because often what it has to do with is whether the property is going to be financed. And insurance companies, mortgage companies generally do not require flood insurance if something is in an X zone. Now, even though it's considered to be of moderate to low risk, it's important to recognize that 25 to 30% of all flood insurance claims paid every year are in these less hazardous areas, the X zones. So what will also show is that X zones tend to have the lowest cost associated with them because of the low risk. So it might still be a very good investment, given that 25 to 30% of claims paid are in these X zones. The higher risk areas have prefixes starting with A or V. The A zones are properties that are inland and are high risk of flood. The ones that have a V prefix are closer to tidal water, coastal areas. All of these are high risk of flood, and generally, if a property is in one of these zones, the lender will require flood insurance. Okay, so true or false? Another quiz question. Flood insurance is part of homeowner's insurance. The answer is false. It's a separate policy that needs to be purchased separately from a qualified insurance agent.